this kicked off years of the Mueller investigations and impeachment proceedings against President Trump, not to mention tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars wasted and many destroyed lives along the way. It's arguably the biggest scandal in American political history, and it exposes the fact that the left's beloved messiah, Barack Obama, whom they always claim was scandal-free during his administration, was the man behind the curtain directing all this chaos, and himself was the threat to democracy that they always claim Donald Trump is.
Revolution of common sense.
Revolution of common sense.
A revolution of common sense.
Truth was once common sense, but today, truth is uncommon. Explore biblical truths around faith, business, and politics with Peter Demas. Uncommon Sense in Current Times.
Hey folks, welcome to Uncommon Sense in Current Times. You know, on July 18th, the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, dropped a bombshell. She said that the former President Barack Obama and his administration engaged in what she called a treasonous conspiracy to undermine Donald Trump's 2016 election. So I'm kind of happy to and excited to have Mark Tapson join me. Mark is the Shulman Fellow on Popular Culture at the David Horowitz Freedom Center. He's a cultural critic, screenwriter, political commentary. His writings appeared on Front Page Magazine, Breitbart, Time, Federalist, National Review, seen him on CNN, all different places. So he is the host of the Front Page podcast, The Right Take. And today he joins us to discuss his revelations in his article, The Plot Against the President Revisited. So, Mark, thank you so much for joining. I appreciate you being here today.
Thanks so much for having me. Glad to be here.
So I'm curious. So Tulsi Gabbard used the word treason, but the constitutional standard for treason is very, very narrow on intention. The founders were very scared that it would be used for political purposes, like we've seen in England and in England's history. So, do you think it actually meets the level of treason, or do you think it's more something else?
That's a good question. I'm not sure if it meets the technical definition of treason, but I'm sure that if Tulsi Gabbard came out and used the word treasonous conspiracy, I'm sure that she got clearance about that before, legally speaking, before using that term. I don't think she would throw that around lightly. So I think we probably are talking about treason here. She called it, as you noted, a treasonous conspiracy. She called it an egregious abuse of power, a blatant rejection of our Constitution. So we're talking about something that's about as serious as you could possibly get.
All right, so let's kind of run down real quick for those that may not understand or know, because there was a whole lot that was happening. The news took it as if it was gospel, like it was as real as it could possibly be. And even to the point where I know many people that were Trump supporters was like, man, did he engage in this or not? And there was connections with Russia, it seemed like. So can you kind of briefly give us kind of a Cliff Notes version of what happened in this particular situation here?
Yeah, the thumbnail sketch of it is that the Obama administration, who were not happy that Donald Trump won the election in 2016, which he was not expected to do and definitely not supposed to do, the Obama administration decided basically to do everything possible to undermine this duly elected new president and subvert the will of the American people in the process. So they manufactured intelligence claiming that Russia had helped Donald Trump get elected. They sought and obtained authorization to eavesdrop on the Trump campaign. They continued monitoring the Trump team even when no evidence of wrongdoing was found. Then they relaxed the National Security Agency rules to allow evidence to be shared widely within the government, which pretty much ensured that this information would be leaked to a complicit media. Mark Levin at the time called the effort a silent coup by the Obama administration. And this kicked off years of the Mueller investigations and impeachment proceedings against President Trump, not to mention tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars wasted and many destroyed lives along the way. It's arguably the biggest scandal in American political history, and it exposes the fact that the left's beloved messiah, Barack Obama, whom they always claim was scandal-free during his administration, was the man behind the curtain directing all this chaos, and himself was the threat to democracy that they always claim Donald Trump is.
Why then do you think so many people, even Trump appointees, took it seriously? Like if it was so baseless as alleged, if it was so, why was it taken so seriously outside of Democratic pressure to try to impeach him or do something like that? That's the part that I'm kind of like, was it so credible enough that people bought it? And then if that was the case, why can we not say it was just not credible enough for Obama to have also bought it? Like, do you see where my question is? It seems like it's two sides of the same coin.
I think a lot of people, even among conservatives, began to suspect there was something to it simply because, well, for a couple of reasons. One is I think that even a lot of conservatives were in denial about the extent to which the deep state in the government is manipulating, or at least in this instance, was manipulating this narrative, and that the mainstream media was wholeheartedly behind it. So there was basically just the one side, this one narrative that was being pushed, and it seemed legitimate. Now we have these revelations, although, many conservatives ever since then have recognized that this whole RussiaGate hoax was exactly that, a hoax. But the narrative was overwhelming, and it was on the part of the entire Obama administration or outgoing administration. The mainstream media, as I said, was completely complicit. I think it was just hard to deny that there was at least some fire where all this smoke was coming from. I think that the narrative was just overwhelming. Everyone in the media was complicit about this, and all of these so-called intel reports seemed legitimate. It wasn't unreasonable to assume that Russia would be behind some kind of election interference. I mean, every U.S. election cycle, Russia attempts to manipulate public opinion in some way, usually unsuccessfully, if not always unsuccessfully. In fact, in September of 2016, the CIA and FBI were reporting that Russia had taken no steps to penetrate U.S. election systems or to manipulate public opinion in favor of one candidate or the other, beyond just a kind of an impotent social media campaign to discredit both candidates, which is similar to what they always do at U.S. election time. But I think that it was just easier to buy this narrative than it was to resist it, and there was no evidence to the contrary at the time.
Would part of it have to do with the fact that, and you alluded to this earlier, that no one wanted to stand up and say the emperor has no clothes, that Obama is actually not as good of a guy as we think? Like, no one wanted to be the first one to step in that snow. Could that possibly be the case as well?
Yeah, I think so. Also, I think it's he's a much beloved figure on the left, and it was difficult to sort of, I think even for conservatives, for many conservatives anyway, I think it was a little difficult to believe that he was behind this. It was more likely that Hillary Clinton was behind something like this, but Obama has always kind of seemed untouchable. And so I think you are probably correct in that.
So now, again, outside of what Tulsi Gabbard has said, do we have any hard evidence that Brennan, Comey, Clapper, any of those people, that there's hard evidence to prove they deliberately misled the public? Or again, is this the garbage in, garbage out? Do we have, could they argue they just didn't know any different? Or is there hard evidence that's now showing that they did know?
Well, according to Tulsi Gabbard's declassified documents, there are about 114 or something pages of these declassified documents, and at least initially. I believe there are more coming out now. And Dan Bongino, for example, said just over the weekend that what he has seen even since Tulsi Gabbard's revelations has shocked him to the core. But according to what's been released so far, it is documented beyond the shadow of a doubt that President Obama directed, as I said earlier, he was the man behind the curtain, that he directed these agency chiefs, these members of the deep state, to fabricate these allegations about his duly elected successor in a covert attempt to undermine the Trump presidency. So, in fact, all the emails that Tulsi Gabbard has access to now about this new intelligence community assessment that Barack Obama ordered, they refer to Obama's directive, to his orders. So there is now a paper trail, loosely speaking, that is connecting Obama to complicity or involvement in this crime.
When I think about something that is similar in nature through our history, the Nixon and Watergate, the Pentagon Papers, which ended up ultimately was the beginning that led to Watergate, that whole beginning to end that he did, and stopping trying to stop Ellsberg, and then later, again bugging the Democratic National Convention, all of that. This seems akin to that. But do you think the difference is because the media was infatuated? Because, Obama is more likable than Nixon. Honestly, if I wanted to just go have a beer with somebody, I'd rather pick Obama than Nixon. Even though I disagree with Obama tremendously more, but he just seems like he'd be more fun to be around. Is that part? Do you think that's part of the reason why that this didn't get exposed earlier, where Nixon was kind of like that? We're trying to break this news.
Yes, Nixon. No, I think you're right about Obama coming across as more likable than Nixon. But this scandal, this actually dwarfs the Watergate scandal. And I was around for the Watergate thing. I saw just how obsessive the media became, and everybody became about this, what seemed at the time to be the most terrible scandal in American political history. And this is going to dwarf that.
Why do you think that? You said that twice now. Like, what makes you think this one is going to be so much worse than what Nixon did in this situation?
A couple of reasons. One is I think it's basically, and we've alluded to this already, it's going to unmask Obama, a man who has been sort of lionized by the left, and that historians no doubt will lionize down through history. And I think this pulls the mask off of Obama, and it's going to expose a lot about the Democrat Party. In fact, and another thing before I forget, one of the disturbing revelations about this is the state's weaponization of the intelligence community and the complicit media against its political enemies, including the American people. That's one of the things that makes this so such an extreme scandal. But also, I think the upshot of these revelations is that, in the big picture here, is that it is the Democrat Party that is shown to be the true threat to democracy. The left has smeared conservatives for years as election deniers, conspiracy theorists, threats to democracy. But now it looks like it's demonstrable fact that all of this is projection. The left is always guilty of that of which they accuse their opponents. All these so-called conspiracy theories we've been accused of for years have all turned out to be true.
Right.
And it's the Democrats that have promoted conspiracy theories in order to demonize their opponents. So it's the Democrats who have denied every Republican election victory in the last 25 years, including Trump's most recent victory. It's the left that is the threat to democracy in this kind of power-mad pursuit of permanent one-party hegemony. It's the Democrats who have weaponized every government agency from the FBI to the IRS against the American people. It was a treasonous, as Tulsi Gabbard put it, a treasonous attempt to subvert a duly elected president and undermine his presidency and delegitimize it. It's hard to think of a political scandal that would be more serious than that. So that's why I say it's going to dwarf the Watergate crime.
So as I look at this and I think about what you're saying, we've been seeing and we've been suspecting a lot that's been happening with the intelligence community and what they're doing with it. But we're also seeing along those same lines the media that I think goes beyond complicit. They seem to be a lot more. They are attempting to manipulate, and again, that's not like a surprise. I mean, the Pulitzer Hearst scandal of I'll get you a war. I mean, they've manipulated people throughout history, but it seems to be a lot worse now, and I think that's why there's such lack trust in it.
Yeah.
Why do you think? Do you think that one has influence over the other, or do you think they're two independent institutions that are having the same goal in mind?
By two, you mean the media and
Like
the
the
government?
media and the intelligence community.
Oh, yeah. Well, the mainstream media, whose credibility has just been completely destroyed over the last 5 to 10 years, they destroyed that credibility by proving themselves to be lackeys for the state, as long as the state is, as long as the state leans left. So that's why they've destroyed their credibility. We can all see, everyone can see that the mainstream media leans far left almost completely. Even Fox News is not as conservative as the left likes to accuse it of being. Far from it. But the mainstream media is very complicit, and in fact, I think it's almost too bad that no one is likely to go to prison over this scandal, because I think there are many media figures who deserve it for this collusion. They're as guilty as anyone in the deep state. But as long as the state aligns with their leftist orientation, then the mainstream media is perfectly happy to collude with that state and to put out the narrative that the state wants it to, and Obama knew that he could count on them to do all that. So, the media is it's hand in glove with this Russia hoax and collusion and apparently treason.
But with Obama being a media favorite, do you think anything is really going to come of it now? Do you think that, I guess legally we can try to do something with it, or I guess the government can. But in reality is usually that doesn't happen unless there's enough public pressure to be able to do so. Otherwise, you're attacking somebody who people think is great and is beloved. So do you think that anything can effectively be done in this situation at this point in time, again, with the media, with Obama being the media darling?
Yeah, legally speaking, I'm not optimistic that anything is going to come of this. Tulsi Gabbard says that she has submitted these documents to the Department of Justice, and she's requesting that they pursue indictments and charges of treason, and I don't see that happening. I think we'll be lucky to get indictments, and I see it as, I don't want to say impossible, but I am very skeptical that we will see convictions coming out of this, except possibly a couple of lower level deep state figures who may be thrown out there as a bone to, or a scapegoat. But politicians are almost never held accountable for what they've done. So I don't think that the right should be expecting convictions or justice in the complete sense, or accountability. I think what we have to take away from this is just the revelations themselves. I think we have to accept that the biggest benefit of all of this is going to be that it will be impossible for the left to deny what actually happened. And so the truth will be out there. And that's what I think we have to cling to, is that the truth is out. People may not be held accountable for it legally, but if the truth is out there, then we can cling to that. We can stand by that. And people maybe whose minds are open enough to it, who might not be conservatives, but they're open-minded enough to look at the truth and start questioning where their allegiances should lie, then things may change. Public opinion may change, and so there may be a shift in terms of the way we view right and left in this country, and Republicans and Democrats. And hopefully this will impact the way historians record Barack Obama's achievements or lack thereof, and Trump's also. It will help vindicate, of course, Trump, who has been smeared nonstop since he first announced his presidency 10 years or so ago at this point. So that's what I think conservatives have to cling to, is just the fact that the truth is out there.
You know, I just looked it up. I was kind of curious because I remembered as you were talking that Tulsi Gabbard at one time was a Democrat before, until fairly recently. And I just kind of looked up the history of Gabbard and Obama, and it appears, and again, I have not completely verified this. This is a quick internet search right now, so recognize my source may be Reddit, and I just didn't know it. But it appears that Obama endorsed Tulsi Gabbard in 2012. So we're not looking at somebody who has like an axe to grind or anything like that. It appears that what she has, she's doing for the right reasons and for the right things. Would you agree with that?
Yes, and you know, people very often start off on the left and then see the light at some point, and that shift toward the right may or may not be sudden. I mean, I was a Democrat for many years, most of my adult life, actually.
Me too.
Okay, right. And, you know, it's funny because it rarely goes in the other direction. But the man that I work for, or although he passed away recently, David Horowitz, you know, is a prime example of that. A guy who started off literally as a communist. I mean, he was working with the Black Panthers. His parents were communists. He was a red diaper baby, as they call him. And then for a couple of reasons, he had a political epiphany and switched from left to right. And then he became one of the biggest warriors for our side. Tulsi Gabbard, as you noticed, started off as a Democrat. I'm not sure where she is in her political conversion. It takes a while. It took me a little while. But I have met Tulsi Gabbard, and I can tell you that in person, as well as in the media, but definitely in person, she comes across as a person with a very quiet strength, and someone who is someone who's not going to jump to conclusions about things or bounce around from one political position to another. She's somebody who puts a lot of thought into her belief system, and so I think she has seen the light, and she's you know, in the process of just I guess, well, I'm not sure, I'm just repeating myself at this point, but she's in the process of this conversion. And so, no, she's not somebody who is a far-right ideologue. She came from the left, and, you know, when people come from the left, they know how the left works. They know how the left operates. One of the reasons that the left hated David Horowitz so much was that he knew them better than they knew themselves. And I think Tulsi Gabbard probably has that understanding as well.
Now you've referenced a couple times earlier part of this interview of the deep state, and I know that's a very popular phrase now that kind of encompasses all conspiracy theories start from the deep state. You know, can you define the deep state? Like, how would you define it?
Yeah, I imagine people have different definitions of it, but I guess you could say it's basically a covert network within the government, and depending on the administration, that deep state may have more or less influence. And in the Obama administration, of course, it had a tremendous amount of influence. The deep state was wholeheartedly united with Obama's agenda, and some of the members of that deep state included people like Susan Rice, John Brennan, Loretta Lynch. there are a bunch of them, and sometimes it's referred to as the swamp, and the conservatives are always hoping that Donald Trump will drain the swamp, and that's what they mean, is that he'll dismantle this network, this deep state network, which has such influence and which is willing to collude out of the eyes of the public to further an agenda. So that's what the deep state is this network that's working in a very undemocratic way, with little accountability, if no accountability, and certainly no visibility publicly.
Isn't that similar, though, to like the critiques of Andrew Jackson's kitchen cabinet? The people that weren't officially elected, but they were the ones that really guided the policies of that time. Is this any different than that? And just now they're just a lot more sophisticated than what they were back in the 1800s?
It's funny, I hadn't thought of it that way, but I suppose you're right about that. But I definitely think it's more sophisticated now. I mean, especially with the technology that we have, the surveillance technology and emails and all of this stuff, it's definitely more sophisticated and I would say more sinister. So I think that's one of the positive things that will come out of this scandal is revelations about just how influential and subversive this network is and can be. And I hope that it will inspire more intense calls to dismantle this kind of thing and drain the swamp.
So after the JFK assassination, after Watergate, and then Ford pardons, then you have the countless scandals with Clinton, and we're seeing this. It seems like after every one of these very large scandals, there seems to be less and less trust of our government. Do you think that even though this scandal will be shining light into a dark event, do you think that could have that backlash too of people just moving further and further away of trusting our government, even if we were to eliminate it, they don't believe it anyway?
Yes, although I think it depends on the administration. Like, for example, the Trump administration has promised to drain the swamp and eliminate the deep state network. Whether or not it can accomplish that, we'll see. But I think it depends on who's in office and how clearly they are not aligned with the deep state. I think that's what will inspire some confidence in people in the government again. I think it's good. I mean, obviously, conservatives begin with a healthy skepticism of government, but you don't want it to completely collapse. You don't want trust in your elected leaders to completely collapse. But I think it just depends on the politician, and it depends on who's in charge. So that's one of the things the Trump administration and afterwards, hopefully, the Vance administration will inspire in people is to begin to at least trust to some extent what our elected leaders are telling us and doing for us.
So we're at the end at the end. Is there anything that you want to be able to just point to people who are listening to this, and we have people that are listening to it both on video as well as audio podcasting as well. I know obviously we want to send people and talk to about your podcast as well. But is there anything else that goes beyond your podcast that you think that people really need to be paying attention to what's going on right now in relation to this? And then also, since we're talking about it, or I'm talking about it, tell us a little bit about your podcast and what you're doing to help educate people of what's happening in our country.
Well, thank you. Let me start with that first. Yeah, I have a podcast called The Right Take with Mark Tapson, and I have a lot of amazing guests. I work for the David Horowitz Freedom Center, which is a nonprofit that promotes the values of freedom and the Constitution, and it's very pro-American. And our flagship website there is frontpagemag.com, where we have a lot of awesome political commentary. And so I've been blessed to have lots of just incredible guests. I've had Pete Hegseth on just before he was nominated for his position, Had Dinesh D'Souza, lots of major conservative figures. They're always very interesting. So, I would like to steer people there, not just for my sake, but because there are great conversations going on there. And I already mentioned frontpagemag.com with the political commentary. In terms of educating yourself about this scandal that we've been talking about, there's a book now. It might be a little bit dated. It's 5 years old. It's by Lee Smith, called The Plot Against the President. And a year later, it was made into a documentary of the same name, which is also worth watching. That gives people a lot of background. And I guess I'll give a plug for Glenn Beck here, because just over the weekend I saw that he put together a 30-minute video that lays out every detail, this whole timeline of this whole scandal on 3 big blackboards. It was kind of entertaining and fascinating to watch. It might be kind of overwhelming, actually, within 30 minutes, but that's a good way to get a lot of background on this scandal and then just keep up with what's being revealed now, thanks to these new revelations.
Well, Mark, thank you so much. I do appreciate you talking about this. I think, again, I agree. This is especially with most people, millennials and below, they are completely unaware of any type of scandal like this. And I agree. Even when you look at it historically, depending on how involved everybody was, this could be. You're absolutely right. This could be one of the largest scandals that's out there that's ever hit our political system at this level. So I appreciate you coming on and talking about it. I think it's very important that we learn more about it and we know more about it. And so again, I thank you so much for being on the show.
Peter, it was my pleasure. Thanks for having me. Keep up the great work.
Thank you so much. You too.